もしそれが彼女の意に反しているのであれば、好きでもない場所に引き止められたと気づいたとき。
After the whole incident with Adwo's servant Feng Ming, the usually in control Jinshi is faced with the dilemma of either handing Mama her just freedom or forced servitude. After some pained consideration and a serious discussion with the apothecary in question, Jinshi eventually decides to let Maomao go off to her previous life in the pleasure district.
交渉失敗。Maomao解雇。
Of course, Maomao herself didn't really like how things turned out. Despite the forceful employment, the pay was pretty decent after all. So after Jinshi suffered enough mentally and crashed right in during her escapades at the Verdigris house, Maomao did not hesitate to accept his invitation back into palace work. Now the interesting question forms. What if Maomao had never accepted the invitation back? Or what if Jinshi showed just a little more restraint and left Maomao well enough alone? Well, in the world of Apothecary Diaries, where characters breathe such realistic life and politics never rest, the answer could turn out way more complex than one may think. So let's get right to it and take a look at the possibilities that could have awaited this world with just a little less Maomao.
数日後、都の花町に美しい貴人が現れる。
Stagnancy of the heart. Suppose either Mama refused or Jinshi never offered a return in the first place. Either way, I think the heart that would be affected the most is actually Jinshi. We already saw how utterly devastated and depressed he was by the departure of Maomao. Sure, Gaoshun related it to his reaction when his toys were taken back when he was a young child, but obviously things are different right now to a degree. It's a less loud tantrum and more emptiness in spirit. Maomao wasn't just a toy that provided entertainment. She was one of the very rare souls that didn't look at Jinshi with eyes of adoration or admiration. In fact, she looked at him with eyes of total detestation, but that's beside the point. She was a rare person in Jinshi's life, and down the road would have been an essential person in showing Jinshi where his responsibilities and path truly lie. So maybe Jinshi's emptiness only lasts for a couple of weeks after Maomao's left, but you could say his development as a person actually depends quite heavily on this one apothecary who treated him differently. Now, I don't expect Jinshi to have totally isolated himself from Maomao entirely. After all, we've seen he's not completely averse to the idea of sneaking out into places outside the palace, like the pleasure district. I can very easily imagine a reality where he visits from time to time, dropping off gifts or just catching up with Maomao's activities in general. Speaking of, in Maomao's case, I don't see her taking things nearly as hard. After all, she's the main character, so even if the story does shift around, she's likely to come out on top one way or the other. With what we've seen, she's more than capable of handling medical incidents outside the palace. To a degree, she's more than qualified. But with this much more time to work, she'd likely make some much larger leaps in her actions than she usually does. With her now shortened stint at the palace, you could say Maomao's ambition and taste buds for problem solving were tickled just a little bit, potentially enough for her to look at the pleasure district a bit differently. In a place where the poor try to make the most of what they have and where the rich so frequently visit, there's no shortage of opportunities for a street-smart Sherlock Holmes with a medical degree to make a name for herself.
おいよ、少しはマシになったじゃないか。すぐに客を取ってくれてもいいんだよ。
But we're getting ahead of ourselves. With everything we said about Jinshi previously, a similar thing could be said about Maomao. The fact is, her family here in the pleasure district would still be the same as it was in her childhood. Her pseudo-sisters at the Verdigris house pretty much always got their hands full. What's more, her foster dad, who's old as hell and has a lot to do as the town's go-to apothecary. In matters of the heart, Maomao will find it to be a difficult place to develop. Consider the people she eventually finds and treasures in the palace. Xiaolan, Shisui, Gyokyo, the quack doctor, and of course, even Jinshi himself. Maomao eventually forms close bonds with many people there, and in particular, we see later on just how much her friendship with both Xiaolan and Shisui eventually changed her. Whether it be good times or bitter times, the experience she gains from her relationship with them helps mold her into a person who's that much stronger for it. Sure, on the outside, Maomao will keep her stoic expression and move on with her life in the pleasure district, maybe with even some grand success. But when it comes to her developing as a girl, as a friend, and as an emotional being, well, I can't help but think how that's just stunted by just a little bit. Before moving on, do remember to like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more awesome content like this one. And if you want to continue the discussion about our missing Maomao even more, make sure to join the comments down below and get in on solving this what if. The ones left behind.
甘いな。
毒ですけどね。
Zooming out to the bigger picture, there are some select moments in the series that would have drastically different outcomes if Maomao weren't around. Starting off with the obvious, all the rest of the palace mysteries that occur are unlikely to have been solved. After all, Maomao has proven time and time again that she's more than just a useful pawn for Jinshi. While she is an expert apothecary, she's also an extremely intelligent person overall, crossing over to genius detective territory. Evidently, right after Maomao returns to the palace originally, she ends up solving a poisoning case involving Fugu, and another case involving a metal worker. And as you already know, that metal worker case in particular is tied to a significant incident in the apothecary diaries, that being the attempted assassination of Jinshi during a purification ceremony. And as fans are aware, Maomao herself needed to rush over towards the scene to eventually thwart that scheme. You see what I'm getting at yet? If Maomao weren't in the palace, Jinshi could not have enlisted her to solve the metalworker case. If that case wasn't solved, and if Maomao wasn't actively on site, there would be no one to connect the dots between that and the eventual ceremony assassination attempt. With all that in mind, you could say Maomao's absence could mean the successful assassination of the hidden prince, Jinshi. Now, is this enough for me to conclude he would surely be dead? I mean, the guy's fast enough to evade bullets, and strong enough to safely jump down a waterfall with a Maomao in his arms. Jinshi is clearly a unit, and it's hard to say he wouldn't have been able to save himself from at least lethal injury. That being said, the fact remains that Maomao played a pivotal part in dismantling that whole scheme and many others that went on in the palace. Without a Maomao around, it's hard to imagine Jinshi and Gaoshun being able to juggle all the politics and scheming going around. Besides Jinshi and his health though, there is another man in the palace who would love to have Maomao in their arms. Of course, I can only be referring to the daddy himself, Lacan.
ほう、こう来たか。君の打つ手はいつも突拍子もない。マオマオはそんな君に似たんだな。
If you recall, he had a pretty vested interest in taking ownership of Maomao. So much so that he constantly visited Jinshi for a time to heckle him, planting some pretty pivotal ideas in his head. Now, Lacan didn't like the fact that Maomao was on Jinshi's side in the first place. In fact, the reason he started showing up was to get Jinshi to fumble with Maomao. So you could say that with Maomao returning outside the palace, his chances of getting Maomao under his wing are substantially higher. But that's where things become a bit muddy. You see, Lacan was aware that Maomao was living with Luomen. The reason he hadn't taken her was due to the surrender to the Madame of the Verdigris house. After all, he ruined their star courtesan. And Maomao herself was traumatized as a child after seeing such a man get beaten up on the street. Add to that, Lacan actually has great respect for the old man Luomen, a relationship anime onlys have actually gotten a small taste of. The point is, Lacan finds it to be an unnecessary task to separate Maomao from Luomen. Things only really changed after he realized Maomao was under the care of Jinshi. While Luomen is one thing, Jinshi is a whole other case. He can't have his only daughter hanging around a sneaky prince who looks a part of a sleazy playboy. In that case, Maomao would definitely be better off under his own care. All that to say, we would have probably seen less of Lacan if Maomao were back in the pleasure district doing her own thing, which would have been somewhat of a plus for Maomao considering how much she doesn't like seeing him. That being the case though, Lacan would be another character who would have unresolved development. Remember what we got with Maomao tricking Lacan into buying a courtesan? The only reason things got that far and ended up the way they did was because of a perfect storm. Likely, Lacan would never have even attempted to buy a courtesan if not for Maomao's suggestion. And if that's the case, Mei would not have had the chance to bust the lid open on the actual condition and location of Fengshan. No Maomao, no happy family reunion. Could you imagine a world where we don't catch sight of Lacan being a happy family man? It's funny that despite how much he doesn't like him, Maomao has a lot to do with how happy things turned out for the guy. I guess you really don't know how different things can be with just a little bit of change.
本当はちゃんと話して伝えたかったな。
A future unfamiliar. Funny enough, as the story of Season 2 wrapped up, Maomao found herself in quite a familiar situation for us as viewers. Once again, she is not in palace grounds as she's living her days back in the Pleasure District. And all those hearts that we mentioned were touched, Jinshi, Lacan, Xiaolan, and even Shisui. All of them are no longer the same as they used to be. Some are even far, far away from Maomao's small reach, potentially never to be seen again. Though it turns out this wild what-if scenario isn't too far-fetched after all, as the gears of destiny all move into place. What will change in the future of our chaotic apothecary? Are the days of exciting detective work and chill friendly banter now just a far-off dream? Who are we kidding? Nothing's getting in the way of Jinmao on our watch. But if you can't imagine a world without us, consider leaving a super thanks on this video. It really means a lot. Are there any other possible changes we didn't take into account? Do you think Maomao would be better off staying outside the palace for good? What's your favorite scene of Maomao in the palace that you just can't get out of your mind? Share your thoughts, we can't wait to hear it. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be seeing you again next time.